I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord God, Father God, we want to thank you for another blessing. Lord, you have blessed us to come out together as a council for this great time. Lord, we ask that you would guide us through our deliberations of all the things that has to be done.
Yes.
Help us to make great decisions,
Yes.
not only for our good, but for the good of the people of this town. We thank you for all you have done. We thank you for what you're doing right now.
Yes.
And we ask your blessings upon this town.
Yes.
We ask your blessings upon the officers of this council. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes. Is approval of the minutes. We have a special meeting of March 28th and a regular meeting of March the 8th. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
If there are no corrections or requests, I would move that it be approved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now we have a special presentation from the North Carolina League of Municipalities to our police department. Risk review and awards presentation by Matthew Sells. Matthew, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mayor.
And welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Matthew Sells. I'm with the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and I am their law enforcement risk management consultant. And I want to thank you, Mayor Stallings and the Edenton Town Council for this time in recognizing the Edenton Police Department for completing the North Carolina League's law enforcement risk review process. Now, the risk review involves a very comprehensive agency review of high-risk policies, operations, and practices. That includes like a detailed on-site agency review and operations review, including looking at equipment, the facility inspections. I conducted officer interviews. I did observation of patrols, all to validate best practices aligned with policies and in turn with the industry's best practices as well. Now, we specifically look at high liability areas within a police department that consists, like I said, police vehicle operations, response to active resistance or use of force. We also look at evidence processing and look at the evidence room, employment practices, and procedures, training. There's about 39 categories in all that we look at with those as well. The review is supported by the North Carolina Chiefs of Police Association, and I'm proud to report that the Edenton Police Department has successfully completed the law enforcement risk review process. The chief, the command staff, and the department's officers prioritized this initiative and made this a department priority throughout. The department was very proactive and involved during the whole process. I want to thank Chief King, the department's command staff for their leadership and their willingness to participate in this very important initiative. They were very open and transparent during the whole process. I myself have spent 25 years in law enforcement and 12 years as a police chief in a little town called Trotman, North Carolina in Iredell County, and have additionally worked with numerous agencies, as the chief can tell you, across the state, not only with the league, but with Police Chiefs Association and Police Association as well. And the officers I work with, just like in Edenton, have observed demonstrate a high level of commitment to their communities and in best practices to enhance professional policing and to positively impact the communities and relationships. And I'd like to present the chief, the police department, and the town with a plaque that recognizes their completion of the risk review process, and it recognizes the police department for completing the law enforcement risk review management and serving the community in a professional manner to minimize risk to their community and citizens and officers as well. And it's dated today, April 12th, 2022. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. We appreciate it.
Mayor, if I could just take a few minutes just to
Absolutely.
speak to the town council and the town manager and everyone that is present. As a department head, a lot of department heads across the country, when they walk into an organization, do not receive the blessing that I received as the police chief when I came here to Edenton. It's because the town council found funding for a new police department. That was part of this process. Chief Fortenberry had a lot of great policies in place. I had a great foundation when I walked to the Edenton Police Department, so I would be remiss to leave him out of this, because I can tell you I came into a great place. And I'm proud to say today that because of the teamwork that we all put in, we all received this award, and going forward, I want us to keep in traditions. You know, Edenton may be small, but we're doing big things here. I can tell the world that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for obtaining this award. We appreciate you.
One more thing to add, Mayor, to this before we step away, so that we will see a reduction starting July 1st in our insurance rate from the league for our upcoming year. And that was another big bonus for this. So we thank you, 14%. So we thank the Chief and Matthew for getting this together to help us improve our overall financial model and cost associated with having a police department. Thank you very much.
Do you have another course that you could go through to give us another?
Yes, 14% off the police professional liability, employment liability part. And if once the state gets on board, then they go through that process. I think we're gonna add 2% more on top of that. So we'll be up to 16 once the state starts.
That's great. That's great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next presentation is from Avonwall Hope Line, and Courtney Cottrell, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. My name is Courtney Cottrell. I'm the Executive Director of the Albemarle Hope Line. Hope Line is celebrating our 40th anniversary this year of providing services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault in Northeast North Carolina. We serve 6 counties from Cholon to Currituck, so 6 out of the 7 counties in the 1st Judicial District. And I think I'm mostly here this evening to remind the town why we are a line item in your budget. And the bottom line is that the services that you're funding save lives. Domestic violence is still the leading cause of homicide, particularly among women in the United States. Females in the U.S. are still more likely to be killed by their own intimate partner than by anyone else. And that is what we are here to prevent first and foremost, and then also to provide long-term healing for victims that have suffered this type of violence. We do have an office here in Edenton. The funds that you provide us also relieve a burden on a lot of the other agencies that we work with. Chief King among them, that if they go out on a call for a domestic and let's say there aren't charges pressed, or someone's not necessarily interested in pursuing criminal justice, they give them our brochures and they connect them with an advocate who can help them with safety planning, who can help victims to work on some of the barriers that may be preventing them from leaving an unhealthy relationship, whether that be housing, employment, childcare, anything of that nature. Our advocates take a lot of burden off of the clerks of court. They will go and help anybody who is filing for a protective order, walk them through the paperwork, make sure that they get all of the information down on paper, because whatever is not in that initial filing cannot be brought up in the hearing. So especially when we're working with people who've experienced a high level of trauma, just getting their story down on paper can be a really, really big challenge. So our advocates do a fabulous job with that. And we work closely with the Department of Social Services, particularly on some CPS cases if there's domestic violence in the home. Do a lot of case management. We're not just bringing victims to safety, but helping to support them long term. We work with a lot of individuals who maybe haven't been in the workforce for a long time and need help, going back to school, getting employment, things of that nature. So all of these services that we provide are really an investment in the community. Domestic violence and sexual assault are not a women's problem, they are a community problem, and if left unaddressed, will become drains on multiple other systems. You have some statistics in your packet. The last year brought unprecedented demand for our services. The number of crisis calls that came into our agency and the number of clients that we served, and I'm so fortunate to be supported by a staff that has such dedication to the cause and such vast experience at what they do that we were able to rise to that demand. I don't know if that necessarily reflects an increase in the amount of violence in the community, or if it's a reflection of how many people knew about our services through the partnerships that we've forged. It's always bittersweet when we're busy. We're probably one of the few businesses that would like to go out of business. And in fact, we have a prevention educator who works in the schools full time, and I tell her that her job is to run me out of one. We would like her to do such a good job at prevention that our numbers go down in the future. So for those of you, I know a lot of you wear a lot of different hats in this community. Please call us anytime if we can do some education. We love to talk to groups about how they can recognize the warning signs of domestic violence and sexual assault, and maybe be able to support a friend or a family member that's going through it. So whether that's a teen group, or we love to talk to churches and different civic groups, so please, I'll come and talk to your book club. This is something we're all very, very passionate about. So we are so thankful for the town's continued financial support of our work, and I hope that you can find some space in this year's budget to help us continue to bring people to safety and support them in their healing process. I'll leave some brochures up front. Are there any questions I can address for the council this evening?
Thank you for all you do.
It's an honor and privilege.
You have an office here in town.
Yes.
Do you see people out of an office? Do you do counseling or
Yes.
take
Yep.
ideas? And
So our shelter facility, the emergency shelter is in Elizabeth City, but in our Edenton office, we do counseling services and meet with a lot of our court clients.
And that location is where it's
It's undisclosed to the public
okay.
for the safety and security of our clients. We oftentimes are working with folks who have not completely left a relationship, and we have to really be careful because victims are never in more danger than when they try to leave. So if someone has not, the abuser is not in custody, then we have to be very, very careful when we're working with folks.
Anyone else have any questions of Courtney? If not, Courtney, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation and for taking your time to come before us tonight. Thank
Absolutely.
You very
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
much. Okay, the next thing on our agenda, he's here, I think, sorry, is Trolley Pub Business Plan by John McCall. So John, come on in and tell us what you got on your mind.
All right. I gotta get this up. Thank you guys for having me. I'm John McCall. I know many of you, a few of you I don't recognize. My wife and I, 4 months ago or so, I don't even remember how the conversation started, but we were talking about one of my birthdays, would have been 10 years ago, this coming up June. We did a trolley pub ride in...
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
Excuse me.
Oh.
No, I'm not talking to you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We did a trolley pub ride, is what it's called, in Raleigh, North Carolina, with about, I think it was like 12 of us. It was me and one of my other friends, shared a birthday, and our friends collectively got together, and it rides all around downtown. It's interactive. You pedal, so much like a bicycle, you seat pedals, which is what drives the trolley for you. Now, the trickery at the trolley pub in Raleigh at the time was he knew that the more you pedaled down those Raleigh hills, the more you were going to want some help. So it comes with an electric motor, and he would always say, "My tip jar is open if you want a little help on this next hill coming up." Trolley pub idea, like I said, me and my wife randomly kind of came up with this the other day, or a few months ago. I think it's one of the things where we were probably looking at the trolley coming down our street. We live currently on West Eden Street, so every day we see the trolley come by. But one thing that we wanted to do when I moved back to Edenton, I'm originally born and raised from Edenton, is try to think of ideas that younger people can get in tune with. The trolley pub idea, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea of the pub portion of it. The pub portion is optional. It would be a BYOB type of deal. If you wanted to partake in that, we would restrict it to 1 cooler per trip. It would be a 2-hour trip. But the main thing is just having an interactive way for people to view the town. I have a map. I didn't make copies, that was my fault, but I will have Corey send it to all you guys tomorrow, but I can pass around this in just a second, probably. I'll kind of skim real quick. But the map, in my mind, and again, obviously I don't have clearance on this yet, but in my mind, knowing that the Hayes Plantation is going to be open to the public coming soon, we would start over here at the Herringbone. I had spoken with Joe Walk about the trolley that he's putting up at the Herringbone. It's going to be a stage-still trolley, and he's going to be serving drinks and food out of that initially. He even said that he thought it would be a good idea where they could sell the tickets for it. It'll start at the Herringbone. It'll go down Water Street here and go over the bridge into Hayes Plantation and circle around, back out, and come back downtown towards the courthouse. I'm spitballing here because I'm not looking at the map because I'm looking at all you. But it'll come down and come back around downtown, down the main drag, and then stop back around the Herringbone spot. Part of the ordeal, though, that I wanted to implement was somehow that it could benefit historic Edenton. So I know we do the passes to view the courthouse and the passes to view the lighthouse and some of the other places. So two of the stops at the courthouse and the lighthouse, and whether they decide to actually go and view those historic sites or not, we would still give part of the proceeds from the tickets as if everybody went. So if we got 10 people on a ride and all 10 people decide they're not going to go view the courthouse or view the lighthouse, we're still, $250 of each place is still going back towards the town. It's an interactive thing. It could be done, like I said, I don't want anybody to get caught up in the name pub on the side of it. That's an optional thing. I've seen plenty of times when I was living in Raleigh where children are enjoying it. Teenage kids for their birthdays, they just like to get up there and they pedal and they ride around town, and the person that's driving the trolley is giving them some historic facts about downtown Raleigh. And what better way to do that here in downtown Edenton with all the history we have with the trolley idea. Some of the stops could be optional. Somebody could make a special request for a different spot, like, well, I don't want to do the courthouse, but maybe we do the Iredale House, and we can figure that out as we go. Initially, what I was thinking was starting it on Saturdays, running from 10 to 12, a 2-hour route, and then again from 1 to 3, a 2-hour route, because those are still within the time frames that all of our historic sites are still open to the public. And then just kind of seeing where it goes from Saturdays. It could be a thing that, especially during the touring season, during the summer, that it's open, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or it could be a thing where it's still just Saturdays or just Friday and Saturday. That'll kind of depend. The two things that I know are kind of the biggest conundrums. One I've already mentioned. I don't know the rules about the new Hayes Plantation, so we would possibly have to amend the route if that's not an option. And the second thing is where I would store it when it's not in use. I've been brainstorming a little bit, and I have a couple places in mind. I won't mention them now because I don't know. But those are my two biggest hang-ups. As far as the pub portion, back to that, I had spoken with Corey briefly before this. I know there's some questions about, well, how would that be? You can't have open containers on the streets. From what I understood, and I contacted the ABC Commission to find out, they don't actually govern the trolley pedal pubs. They said that they treat them much like they do a limousine service. There's a sober driver, and the driver is driving everyone around safely, and it's his discretion to, if people need to leave, make sure they leave and that sort of thing. But there's no governance over that being considered an open container issue while on the trolley pub. Now, obviously, we would have to be pretty tight on that as far as, gauging whether someone is inebriated to the point where we don't want them to ride on the trolley pub or not ahead of time. And then also during the course of the 2-hour tour, if somebody gets out of hand, that would all be governed by the driver. And then with that, we would also have a recycling that we would have on board. And like I said, they're more than welcome to bring one cooler, but we would ask for there to be no more than one cooler, no glass, no bottles. It would all be strictly cans. Everything's recyclable. Yeah, like I said, I don't want anybody to get caught up in the pub portion. This isn't like a booze cruise type of thing. This is just an interactive way for people to see historic town. The trolley pub is open to the elements. So on a nice summer day, it would be really cool. I'm gonna pass around this picture. Like I said, I didn't make copies, but if you can see it from where you're at, that's kind of what it looks like. This is not the exact one that I would probably purchase, but it is all of them are very similar in structure. So I'm gonna pass this around. Yeah, feel free to check it out. In the meantime, do y'all have any questions other than some of the questions I'm probably already figuring based on a couple of things I said?
I would like to ask, do you plan on, one day a week or something to tour the hospitals and the hotels?
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The part I brought up about the historic sites is really just the initial idea. If there is an opportunity to go around to some of the other, new ventures, I've heard discussions of a potential park down on the corner of Mosley and where the cemetery is. I can't think of those streets. Mosley and Albemarle Street. If there's other stuff that's going to pop up, I know over time, I'm totally open to having people, view and tour whatever that we offer, in town. But the historic sites, I already knew kind of what they were, $2.50 for each site you want to go to. So my thought is if I go ahead and give that money back to the town anyway, the option is the riders, whether or not they want to actually view those historic sites. But yeah, I'm open to anything else touring wise.
Will you hire your own drivers?
I would hire my own drivers. I had two in mind that I haven't asked yet because I wanted to try to figure this all out first. But I would like to have somebody who has historical knowledge of Edenton, and somebody that is entertaining in their own right, comical or whatever, to keep things interesting for the riders. So.
Would you have a tour guide on this particular ride?
Well, so that was my goal, is that the driver would also kind of serve as a tour guide. It would be a 2-for-1 type of thing. I've done.
Keep the driver busy.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, unless somebody's in need, unless they need to keep it moving and he's got to turn on the electric motor, the driver is kind of just steering to make sure that they're out of harm's way. So yeah, I would want somebody that has the ability and know-how of how Edenton became what it is, and kind of give some historical background while the ride's going on. So.
John, I'm certainly open to this idea, and I don't want you to feel like I'm grilling you.
No,
you and I know
good.
each other, but
Yeah.
I've got a ton of questions.
Sure.
Ideally, if everything went smoothly for you, the first question is, when is your anticipated start date?
So I actually was trying to figure that out today. Well, I was going to try Friday. Initially, Corey and I talked about me coming on the 25th, but then when he told me the 12th, I was trying to scramble to kind of get some more feedback from the companies, the manufacturers for these trolleys. And I couldn't get a specific answer. I knew this question was going to come up. I would think, from what I read on the reviews on some of the places that I would go to for the manufacturing, 3 to 4 months is about how long it would take to manufacture a new one. Now there's some that I already looked up. There are some that are used. I don't really know the used trolley game like I know the used car game. So I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I would have to kind of see. But yeah, I mean, if this were to be approved, I would try to get it going as soon as I could, as soon as it could be in production, and then obviously delivered here. So.
And do you know enough about the trolley itself? Is there a brake, like you have a brake on a bike or on a car, that can be operated by the driver and not those that are pedaling?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So the stopping part is not up to the pedalers at all. They can pedal all they want, but it's up to the driver to stop the vehicle. Yeah. So it's much like any other vehicle. It's in the in the floorboard for the brake. And there's a pedal as well. Once the electric motor is in gear, the pedal pushes the electric motor as fast as it can get. As far as the speed, I think I think the max speed, because I checked a few different places, I think the max speed was like 18 miles per hour or something. So we're not gonna have to worry about it barreling down and like people not having enough time to get out the way of this crazy, trolley coming at them either, so.
How many
And then the last question of you, and then Corey, I've got a question of you. The last question I have of you, is it truly gonna be owned and operated locally by you and your wife?
Yeah.
Or are you just an agent by some corporate concern from elsewhere?
No, I'm glad you asked that, and that is, so it's funny, when I first looked it up, that was the first thing that came up, like, do you want to franchise this trolley pub? And there's a Savannah trolley pub they franchise, and there's one, the guy in Raleigh is actually a friend of mine. He has done franchising, but he's in Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Raleigh, Wilmington, and maybe Greenville. But yeah, that was an option, but I would want it to be locally owned and operated. And the guy, because I met him through my friend, he completely understood, and he didn't pressure me about like, well, you really can only, you got to sign off through me type of thing. He wasn't trying to press me like that. But yeah, I would like it to be just owned and operated by me and my wife, and it's just something that we do, on the side.
Yeah, that's certainly an important factor
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. I wouldn't want it to be governed by anyone, anybody else other than local. So, yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions. I'm sorry.
Okay.
how many people would you need the trolley to actually do a run, to operate it? You have to have a full load to
so-
do that pedaling?
Well, so you could hypothetically, like I said, it does have an electric motor. So hypothetically, no one would have to pedal. But from the research I did, it said to get it up to like a good enough speed on a flat surface, you need about 5 to 6 pedals. And just to make it worth it, because obviously we'd be paying the driver a percentage of the total, ticket sales or whatever. I'd have to figure that part out exactly, once we get all the nitty gritty. But, you want to make it worth it. So I'd say what we have in our initial business plan is a 6-rider minimum. And that if you wanted to, if you wanted it to be less than 6, you still got to purchase 6 for it to be worth it to everybody. So.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So, I said the people pedal as they're riding the thing and it providing the energy. They also they can bring alcohol on board. Right. Is the alcohol served on board, or do they have to bring it themselves?
They would have to bring it themselves. That's kind of the kicker. Is it's not. I don't want to have to get an alcohol. I don't want to have to get an alcohol license or the serving license. So. And then number 2, I just don't want it to be known, like I've said a couple times in my spiel here, is I don't want it to be known as like a booze cruise. So the alcohol is optional, and it would have to be BYOB. And again, I would limit it to 1 cooler. The size of the cooler, I guess, would just depend on the size of the trolley itself. But I would just say, 1 cooler per crowd. Like you can't. Now, part of what I forgot to mention this earlier. Part of my business plan was to try to implement the herringbone, Malcolm's or Edenton. I call it Malcolm's. What is it really called? Edenton Bay Trading Company. Yeah. Okay. So Malcolm's are the herringbone, and I talked to Joe about this, the herringbone, and then maybe even Surf, Wind, and Fire if they got into doing cans, because like right now they're only doing the tap. But I would want everybody to be able to purchase local, so they would get some sort of discount to go and purchase local from the places that are serving canned beer. So it would all be BYOB to answer your question, and it would not be served, no.
Okay.
Do you know of any other small communities like ours that is doing this right now?
No.
You mentioned Raleigh, but any?
Yeah. It's all the cities that I mentioned a minute ago. The guy, his name is Kai, K-A-I, that started the one in Raleigh. And he franchised them out to Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, those places. I think Greenville might be the smallest of communities that certainly has one right now. And like I said, I actually rode one in Savannah. I went down with a group of friends one time, and not that Savannah's a small town, but Savannah has very similar structured streets as Edenton does. So.
And Corey, the one thing that I would ask of you in anticipation of this, if you could take a look at what regulations are needed and policies and procedures, and find out the pros and cons that the other towns have seen from this type of venture.
And thank you, Hack, and thank you, John. That's something that Dwayne and I have been working on up until this point, because we had a lot of questions about how this business model would fit in Edenton. Tammy shared some information from 2012, where, if you remember, around those times, the whole idea of the rickshaw or the pedal car kind of come around. So that was kind of the closest language that we could find to fit here, but we don't exactly have anything on the books as far as a pedal trolley vehicle. So Dwayne had found some items. We had reached out to.
I found that 2018 Carolina Beach did a very similar thing. It wasn't called Trolley Pub, it was called a commercial pedal vehicle. What I did is I've actually created a draft ordinance related heavily on their ordinance. I've gone through and left some stuff out, highlighted some things that might need to be tweaked and modified to fit certain criteria of Edenton. But I have got that here with me. I've actually got a sample application permit, which may require inspections once a year, on the trolley. I know they have headlights and taillights, so basically street legal, all that. There's nothing really involved when it comes to alcohol because it is in an enclosed space. But that's basically where I've gotten with this so far. But there will be some stipulations that the town council could look at in the ordinance, if you'd like me to send to you or give to you, that you can add. And I can also draft a sample application permit. That way everybody could be on the same page with fees and inspections and what's required of the driver history, stuff like that, if that's a concern.
And so we had a lot of questions of really how to help provide some oversight and some options for businesses, for residents, and also for the council, particularly, there were some concerns that we had about the vehicle and some specifics around alcohol being on town streets, and how do we kind of, help keep that, under control. But we're really chartering into, uncharted territory here, so we didn't really have a good place to start, rather than inviting Mr. McCall to join us and kind of share his idea, so we can really start drafting that language and determining how does that fit Edenton. And that's really the goal here.
When you mention alcohol, we're just talking about beer and wine.
Yes.
Like wine.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's in our executive summary that I've written up. Is strictly just beer and wine. Yeah, no hard alcohol.
John, you lived in Raleigh, is that correct?
Lived in Raleigh, yes sir. I lived there from when I went to NC State my freshman year, 2006, and my wife and I moved back here.
Oh, so you live here now?
Yes sir. I live in my grandfather's Glenn's old house on 213 West Eden. We bought a house on the OPM Road, but we're renovating it, so we're living there during the renovation.
I was wondering about management.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
No.
You'll definitely be managing it yourself.
Yes, sir. No, I wouldn't be driving all the way down here to pitch this to you if I wasn't with you. That's for sure. Yeah, no, we moved back about 3 years ago.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A couple things, just get with me about the Hayes part.
Yeah, and so the other day I actually was walking during the event that was over here Friday, the Arts Council thing, and I was like, I'm bound to see Sam go somewhere because I needed to ask you about that. Yeah, and I couldn't find you. So anyway, I'll get with you on that. I appreciate it.
Any other questions of John? If not, John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
We will take it under advisement.
Yes, sir. Thank you all so much.
Okay, with that, we'll move into our committee reports, and our first one is the Administrative Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We have two matters to report on tonight and request action on. The first action item is the conflict of interest policy update. We shared with the council and the general public at our committee meetings a few weeks ago the fact that our conflict of interest policy needed to be updated, and based on input from the staff and the League of Municipalities and our attorney, we've come up with a conflict of interest a policy that is updated and also complies with some changes that have been made to the conflict of interest statutes here in North Carolina. So at committee meetings, we discussed forwarding this on to full council with the recommendation that we approve the new conflict of interest policy update, and I'll put that in the form of a motion that we do adopt this new policy.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I want to thank Virginia Smith. Did she not work on this, Corey?
Yes, she did. Her and Hood worked out all the details from the committee meeting and was able to get her final draft together.
Virginia, do you have anything else that you need to bring before us or about this? Okay. So, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And Mayor Stallings, the next agenda item for the Administrative Committee is the approval of a bid for council chambers audio-visual upgrade. I see we've got a number of our friends and citizens that are joining us tonight by Zoom. And Zoom was something that we originally started because of the pandemic, and I think that's here to stay. Not necessarily the pandemic, hopefully, but people joining us remotely. We've got people that might be out of town, might have other obligations, might be elderly or infirm. And it's another way for them to access in real time our meetings. And I have received a number of comments from the general public since we began Zooming our meetings that they appreciate it very much, but sometimes our system could leave a little bit to be desired. So Bud Powell and other members of staff had looked into some upgrades that we could make. You may recall from our committee meetings, I think we had 3 bids, 2 of which were really, really high, and recommendation came from staff and our admin that we go with the lowest bid. And you may also recall, was that a situation of where we might get what we're paying for, and there was some concern that that bid was so much lower than the other 2. But it was explained to us by Bud and Corey and the remaining administrative people working on it, that the 2 really high bids had a lot of bells and whistles that we did not need, but that the lower bid could put us in a position where our audio-visual for these meetings would be substantially improved. And they recommended that we go with the lowest bid, and I put that in the form of the motion that we do approve that lowest bid for upgrades and improvements to our audio-visual system. So I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And Mayor Stallings, thank you. That concludes our reports.
Thank you. Okay, the next is the Finance Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon.
So we have 4 things. I'm gonna lump these together, if that's okay. The first 2 deal with the sale of the DART system that Chief has helped us with, and as we went over the last meeting, we're selling this DART system, and that, and then the budget amendment that goes along with the sale is part of that. So I'm gonna put both of those in the form of a motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Only thing I would add to that is thanks to our police chief for securing that sale. So,
Amen.
hearing no discussion on it, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, and thank you, Chief.
And the second thing we have on is the resolution for the town of Edenton to initiate the Harbor Ferry project and the budget amendment that goes along with that. So I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, any further discussion? All
This is
those,
about, I understand, about 3 years, 2 or 3 years down the road.
There are items that we will start seeing in 2022, 2023, and 2024. So it's a 3-year project over a 2-year fiscal cycle.
any further discussion?
Well, Where would the, boat dock at so you can get over there and get off?
Well, I think that's what this is all trying to figure out.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is
I don't think
sort of a
it's
plan,
been
this is sort of
determined
planning to figure that out,
No.
to find the best place.
And this resolution and budget amendment that we're talking about is a separate funding line item that's part of the contingency for the original $5 million project. This is a $500,000 cushion for this project.
Any further? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right.
That's
and-
it for the finance committee.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the next is our Utilities Commission, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond. Corey, would you take that in his absence?
Yes, sir, not a problem, and Councilman Bond is under the weather tonight, so, he is not here, and I spoke to him today, and I told him I'd be glad to handle this for him. So the, only item that the Utilities Committee has is a resolution for the appointment to the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency Board of Commissioners for our first alternate, as our, electric director, Mike Nichols. If you remember back in September, I was appointed as the primary member for this board, and in my absence, they had requested that we determine an alternate, and so we discussed this during the committee portion back on the 28th, and we do recommend that the full council approve this resolution appointing Mike Nichols as the first alternate.
Make a motion.
Sir?
I make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
That's
That's it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, next is new business. And the first item on that is the Tatum family resolution. Corey, you want to take that?
Mayor, that's fine, I didn't know,
I'll say,
Councilman Coleman, would you?
on the 27th of May, Edenton will host the 42nd annual family reunion of the Tatum family with a dinner at Nixon's. We expect representatives from about 10 states, about 40 people will be here. And we thought it would be, because Reverend Melvin Tatum is an active member of our community along with his wife, also along with his brother, that it would be significant to recognize the importance of this occasion and to honor the family on that day. So the resolution has been drafted for consideration by this group. And Reverend Tatum is here tonight. He is a member of the Community Against Violence, active member, also one of our community, not greeters, what is the? Ambassadors,
Yeah.
and has been active in that. And we're very proud that, Reverend Tatum, that you have chosen Edenton to be the host of this year's 42nd family reunion. The family comes together to celebrate their history, to encourage their members to be active in the community, and to raise funds for scholarships, college scholarships. So that's a big evening for your family and for our town. So hopefully we can have this resolution prepared and presented at that time. Can I move that the resolution be accepted, or does that have to come before committee?
You would make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I recommend that we approve the resolution honoring the Tatum family on May 27th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor Stallings, I would like to congratulate Reverend Tatum really on everything that he stands for and everything that he's been in this world. He's a true gentleman. I've known him now, I guess, 2 or 3 years, and
I don't think anybody would question that.
yeah, and he lived such a life and had such a career. He probably could have located anywhere, and he decided to come back to northeastern North Carolina, and more importantly, decided to come back to Edenton after a distinguished career in the military, a career in the corporate world, and certainly in the religious world. So I can't think of a better person and family to honor in this regard. Reverend Tatum, we appreciate everything that you do. And I wanted to say that first, Mayor Stallings, I would like us, this is certainly a very worthy resolution to pass, I would like for us to look towards the future and decide some guidelines about how we enter these types of resolutions, and to make sure that they're appropriate. And again, this is most appropriate, and we're most appreciative of everything that Reverend Tatum brings to our community.
Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly. The only thing is, we set a precedence here, and that's, everybody comes by that's gonna have a family reunion. Of course, apparently this one is different, but I would hesitate to set a precedent, so doing this for everybody.
And I agree, and I think we got a lot of good reasons to approve this one, but I certainly understand that also.
I agree.
I just want to say thank you for all you do, all your family does, and I'm just excited you want to do this here.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, we have a motion in a second, right?
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And thank you, Reverend Tatum, for all that you do for the town of Edenton, being as active as you are in the town of Edenton. You're one of our downtown ambassadors, and we certainly appreciate all that you do, so thank you.
Well, I'd like to invite you to come and present the resolution on that night.
Okay. You'll have to remind me.
Thank you,
Okay, and the next is our CBDG grant administration, and Corey, you want to take that? Well, Dwayne's gone.
Yeah.
So I guess that leaves you.
Yeah, that's fine, I'll take that. He may be speaking with Mr. McCall about some of the language for the first presentation. So, the town recently solicited a request for professional services. You want to chime in at any time, sir? For the administration portion of the Community Development Block Grant that we received sometime earlier this year. I don't exactly remember the date that we did the budget amendment. This was a $750,000 grant that would be used towards 5 homes here in Edenton, 3 of which we had shared would be a complete rebuild, and 2 would be fairly significant rehabilitation of those homes. So part of that program is that we had to solicit professional services to help administer that grant. And I think we received two applications and 2 packets to share that information. Dwayne, you want to stand up?
Yes. So we received one from Insight, Planning and Development, and one from Opportunities Link. The Insight Planning and Development was actually the one that did the legwork to be able to get us the grant. I'm not very familiar with Opportunity Link, but I went through both packets and looked at them, graded them off the scale that they received based on the criteria for the proposal. All said and done, out of the 6 criteria that we had listed out, Insight Plan and Development kind of beat them out for this project. They are, however, a little bit more expensive, but that is a line item budget that will come out of the $750,000 allotted, so it wouldn't be anything additional. I believe Corey was $20,000 difference or something. But we felt that with their knowledge of doing the background work and their basically coming into the office, meeting with us, we felt like they were the best fit for this grant, to administer this grant.
And in the request for professional services, when we solicited these bids, the scoring matrix that we were going to use to grade the proposals that we'll receive will also share with these businesses, of which, when going through that rubric, Insight Planning did see a higher score with their familiarity with this particular project and with the CBDG process as a whole from start to finish. So the staff recommendation is that council does approve the professional services to be awarded to Insight Planning and Development Group.
Do you need a motion for that? So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I just have one question directed to Corey. We just coming off a revaluation of property values here, and by statute, the county's supposed to do that every 7 years. When you have this type of program come through, there are going to be obviously substantial improvements to property. Is there another 7-year waiting period before those get reevaluated, or once the project is complete, would there be a revaluation at that time?
And that's actually a really good question. Thank you, Councilman High, for asking that. Is that we have been in discussion with Melissa with the tax office to determine how often the cycle will be, if we will continue Chowan County as a whole on an 8-year cycle, or if that will be changed. At this time, I don't have an exact answer of what the rotation will be, but if nothing changed, it would stay on an 8-year cycle.
And I'm not pushing for a change. I was just wondering when there's a situation like this where early in the cycle there's been some obvious improvements to the property.
And I think those evaluations would have to be complete by that same appeal deadline that was shared for any other property.
Mayor, I have a question. Go ahead.
Did I understand you say you're out of this grant that you allot so much money to be spent on each house?
The allotment that we were talking about here was for the administration portion of managing this project. But there will be a set amount up to a certain value for whether the home is rebuilt or rehab. But I don't know those exact numbers.
But the material and supplies to rehab a house, there is going way up. Now, a lot of times, whoever get the contract, and the contract states do this and do that. A good carpenter can go in and find a whole lot of stuff that ain't on the contract. But that gives them opportunity to jack the price up.
And so what we'll do, Reverend Poole, to try to combat that is we'll work very closely together with the Insight folks and the contractors, and there are certain stipulations that allow for multiple bids, whether it's a primary contractor, whether it's a sub, whether it's a secondary. There are certain items that have to be met in order to accept a bid moving forward. And typically, from what I remember from this, from the 2017-2018 year, is I think there's at least 3 to 4, and I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4 minimum quotes provided to make sure we're getting a fair comparison. Same scope of work,
I think it was 3
bids, and maybe 3. Maybe we had 4 contractors on the last round in the 17-18 fiscal year when we worked with the county on this before. Maybe that's what I'm getting confused at.
Corey, does Insight overseeing the grant, do they request the bids, do they select the contractors, or is that a separate process?
We will work with them on the pricing, but ultimately, we really would like to try to get the most bang for the buck on these type projects, so it will be heavily weighted towards the lowest price.
But who, do they make that decision or do we make that decision?
They would collect the information and bring that back to us, and we would help them on that decision process, town staff.
Okay. I'd sure like to make sure we hire as many local people as we can for this work rather than bringing in outside people if we can help.
Yes, and we will share those
The local,
concerns and
local
thoughts,
craftsmen.
material and labor.
Okay.
Yes.
They'll hear about this.
Yes, we will. In the 2017-2018, I think the furthest contractor that we had was from the Roper area. I think most of the other contractor bids were here from Chowan County.
That's good to hear. Okay. Good.
And we do have the ultimate say.
Yes.
Any further discussion? We need a motion on that. Okay, all those in favor, well, let's see.
Yeah, we've already got the motion second.
We have a motion.
We do, yeah, just need to call for
Okay,
that.
all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, the next item we have is a travel request for approval for the North Carolina League of Municipalities vision statement in Wilmington. And I don't remember the dates on that, but there's 3 people from here that are planning to go, and we need to make approval for that, so I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve their.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, that finishes our business, new business, and also the next item on there is items considered timely and important. Anybody up here have anything that,
Yeah, Mayor Stallings, I would like to call upon Corey Gooden to give us an update on the monument issue, if he would.
Thank you, Hack. And so we've received a lot of public concern and questions about what the status of the monument was since we were approaching the 60-day mark since the resolution was passed or had passed the 60-day mark. And up until this point tonight, we have had monthly meetings together with the administrative committee and myself to work on some options and potential locations. At this time, that has not been set in stone, but we did want to share with the public that we had not forgotten about this issue, that we were working very closely with our town attorney as well as our administrative committee and myself to figure out where this forever home will be. So we did want to share that. We understand that there's a public need and want to know where we are, and that we hope to make some significant improvements in this decision, and in particular relocation going forward, I would say fairly near future.
And I'll follow up with that because I've been a part of the monthly meetings on that issue, and the most recent meeting that we held was Friday. And I can report, and I know this is not enough for some people, but I can report significant progress from that meeting, and we are now working to hopefully have something for discussion and maybe even action as early as our committee meetings later this month or our regular meeting in May. And that's the type of progress that we're making. So I don't want people hearing this to say, oh, well, they reported on it, but there was no real substance there. The way this process works, we can't share specifics with you right now, but I can report we made significant progress coming out of last Friday's meeting, and it's a goal of the administrative committee and also Corey on behalf of management, like I said, to either have discussion or action at the end of this month or at our regular meeting in May.
Thank you, Hack. I think the main thing that people need to understand is 2 things, actually. We made the decision. the council has made the decision that we will move it. And the second thing is, we cannot move it. We have to abide by the law. And the law says you can't move it until this, Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, lawsuit is settled. And so our hands are tied. Please understand that. You know, everybody doesn't have to follow the law, but this council does and will. So the public just needs to understand that. And I don't mean it harshly, but it's just a fact.
Yeah, and I think the full council and the administrative committee certainly recognizes that, but we also recognize, we wouldn't think it would be wise to not continue discussions and to come up with options, and then just wait for a decision and be left scrambling. So we're trying to be proactive to come up with some options as to what we can do with exactly what you just stated, Mayor Stallings.
Thank you. Anybody else up here have anything?
I got one there. Somebody asked a question. Corey, we started off the end of the year and the first of the year with filling vacancies on the Litter Prevention Commission and the Tree Committee. I just wanted to see, it seemed like we stalled a little bit on filling the vacancies on some of the other commissions. Wanted to see where we might be on that.
And so we did have a little bit of delay there. Dwayne and Tammy and I have been working on this because we wanted to really start with some of the vacancies that our planning department would see the most immediate need. We did complete the mayor's task force as well as the tree committee back in January and February. We wanted to allow Dwayne to get some time underneath his belt to really fill out what the needs, what the wants, what the desires are of those boards. And we have pulled all the applications, and we do plan on having a meet and greet on the 25th for one of the groups that we've received applications for council to see who these folks are. So as of now, that is our next date for deciding. I think this was for the Board of Adjustment. That would be where we would introduce those candidates and appoint them.
This will be at our next committee meeting, end of the month.
So our next meeting will be April 25th, and that's when we would like to bring those candidates here, release the Board of Adjustments for that.
Okay, and then maybe later on the planning board applicants.
Because we don't want to overwhelm the council with so many applicants for so many positions. We're trying to find the ones that are most urgent to get filled.
My concern is if the state approve it, moving the extension, my concern is how much it's gonna cost the city.
Well, apparently it's not gonna cost the town anything. If you recall, we had a lady stood up at that podium and said she was willing to pay for it, so. I'm sorry?
That's right.
And I think that still goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not gonna cost the town anything. And that's super good news.
I hope they don't try to drop a bomb on the top.
Yeah, well,
Going back to the vacancies, do you think in the next probably 90 days, we can get these commissions filled?
Yes.
So I know the planning board is really hurting, and
Yes.
Board of Adjustments.
And those are two that we're starting with next that have vacancies. The two that we have appointed since the beginning of the year and kicked off were ones where we had entire groups that we had started the process. It was delayed for either COVID or the transition period, and then we picked back up and tried to at least get them restarted. These are known vacancies that we should be able to fill within that 60 to 90 day window.
anything else from up here? All right, how about the general public? Do you have any items that you want to bring before us tonight? Tammy, would you look in the overflow room and see if anyone over there has anything they want to bring before us. Okay, then that concludes our,
I have a comment.
I'm sorry?
Susan English was going to say
we
something.
can't take,
Did she what? Did she send you an email?
we can't take comments
I haven't seen
from,
anything.
as I understand it, am I correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Ms. Ingles.
I can make a comment then, if you don't.
I think that you received an email from me that I understand is being entered into the public record.
Susan, I haven't seen anything. I don't.
If you don't mind, I can make a
I'm
comment.
lost on this, I can't comment.
And we can't accept public comment via Zoom. That is correct.
Okay.
Let me find.
Can I make a suggestion? I would certainly be willing to accept her email as timely sent and made a part of the record. You don't have it in front of you right now, but I would suggest we consider it timely sent and make that a part of the record.
Okay, then we can include that.
And is there for one?
Thank
comment
you.
here? I can make a quick comment, probably. Okay. Thank you.
State your name and address.
Okay, I'll be real brief. Hello, my name is Andreen Heath. I live at 818 Johnston Street in Edenton. I'm a newcomer to the town and I'm so proud to be a part of Edenton. And to me, the monument being moved is not about wokeism or rah-rah in your face defeat of Confederacy, but it's about bringing something new to that space. It's a public square, public space, and shouldn't you get excited about what can be there? It could be art from the students at the school. It could be visiting artists that are displayed. It could be information about the new Hayes Plantation. It could be advertising the new pub trolley and many other things. It doesn't have to be. Why keep something that represents hate and the past and defeated ideas? Are we not a 21st century Southern town? Or are we not voted one of the most prettiest places to live? Then let's reflect that in front of our municipal hall. And so as a newcomer to Edenton, I really hope that you will follow the Human Relations Commission's recommendation, and moving the statue is not a defeat, but it's a celebration, bringing in the 21st century for forward-looking people. And the Confederacy isn't dead. Celebrate it in your heart. There are lots of alternatives for that statue. So let's move ahead. I lived in Winston. I was there when all this was happening. The United Daughters of the Confederacy wanted to claim ownership of that statue. And that's what they're suing about, ownership, who owns it and who has the right to move it. I don't think we should get caught up in just following the rules for the rules' sake. I think Edenton can be progressive, can be a joy to be in for all people, and that Confederate statue just doesn't represent it. I'm ashamed every time I go down the street. My family, some people won't visit because of what it symbolizes. And there's so many people who could enjoy this town without that being there, right in the public square, right in front of the municipal building. So please consider that. And you won't have enemies. You will have people really celebrating Edenton and the council. Thank you.
Okay, so, Ms. English, you may go. I mean, that's what you.
Yeah, I would just recommend that her email be entered in pursuant to her request as a part of our public record.
Did you find the email?
I did,
You did.
and, I have one more that I would like to, share also. So, Mrs. Ingalls, she wrote, and I'll read this. Corey, I'm writing because I think the time is right to go ahead and make a new town part of the parcel that the Human Relations Commission has recommended as the next home for the Confederate statue. I think the site is an appropriate location because the statue, of its proximity to the old part of Beaver Hill Cemetery, which actually contains the graves of numerous Confederate soldiers. But I also think the site is perfect for a new town park because it is so beautiful and inviting. As you know, the memo accompanying the Human Relations Commission report on August 23rd, 2021 points out that the town would need to subdivide the lot, which first requires a survey. I hope the town can proceed immediately with these steps since the park will be an asset whether it ends up being the next home of the statue or not. I'm writing now Hackney High and the other councilmen, and I hope they will take action when they meet Tuesday. I will be in Chapel Hill. Okay, personal, but that's the gist of what's there. And
We don't need to take any action on that.
no, just we would like to introduce that to the record. And I also received an email from
I first of all, I've waited an hour and I would like to object because this is a platform that the town council has picked officially, and the fact that we're being restricted from giving public comment via Zoom, I think is ridiculous. And I think you need to relook at that policy and procedure as there are people that are sometimes that cannot be there for other circumstances in the future. For now, I'll accept that, and I've sent an email to Corey that I would like to write into the record related to concerns that I have. In addition to that, I would like an update on the public record request from 5.5 months ago for Elizabeth Bryant that still has not been fulfilled. Thank you all.
Did you have an email from him?
I do, I've got this. Mr. Berger, this is from April 12th, correct? The one you just forwarded?
Yes, sir. I sent this to Councilman Coleman today related to his part as being the liaison for the Board of Adjustments and also Councilman at Large role. Thank you.
Okay, and I will read the email. I hope this email finds you well. On April 25th, the Town Council intends to have a meet and greet with the applicants who have applied for the Board of Adjustment vacancies. Alternatively, I assume interviews will be scheduled in public forum and opportunity and appointments will follow approximately 30 days thereafter. As the Councilman at Large and the Board of Adjustments liaison, I would like your input on the following. Expirations, can you provide the names of the current board members due to expire and or vacancy, town and county level? The Edenton website under news only states an open alternate position be chosen by the County Board of Commissioners, but I understand there are more vacancies. Fair selection process. I assume the town has adopted a policy for board of appointments to ensure fairness and consideration to all persons interested in being appointed to a committee. However, I do not see a town level publication, UDA ordinance, etc. I would kindly ask that you raise this item at today's meeting to ensure the appointments will be fair, unbiased, transparent, and in full accordance with the approved regulations that govern the selection process as passed down from the state of North Carolina. This should also be a 30-day process to appointment as precedent has shown in the past. The Board of Adjustment has maintained a compliant form for many years, which ready alternatives to serve. To rush these appointments through prior to highly anticipated fence / peer appeals on May 16th will only look suspicious and questionable at best. I hope the council would agree and take the proper time steps to avoid further contentions. Side note, Anne Marie pointed out a while back the town had a budget to allow for third-party support on such efforts: application process, notifications, equal presentation, standard review, qualification review to ensure fair appointments. I recommend the council consider looking into this ability. As always, I appreciate your service to the town and know you understand the vital role the Board of Adjustments holds in their role. This evening, several constituents will be in attendance, including myself, to seek further information on this item. As a similar process for the tree committee appointments, with the impromptu Q&A on the love of trees followed with the 2 new appointments 30 days later, will not satisfy the public on the specific board appointment selection. Thank you as we look for the betterment of our town. Vince Berger.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Berger, we have noted that email will also be included in the minutes for this meeting.
Okay, does anyone else have anything to bring up? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. We are adjourned.